Okay, like 2 videos ago, we did a video on the best and worst enemies in Halo. We looked at like everything, and it gets really interesting when you start comparing things, but what if we flipped the script and we looked at the best and worst allies? I mean, surely the Halo allies we get have never really been that bad, right? In Halo Combat Evolved at the very beginning, we have these crewmen that are trying to like defend the Pillar of Autumn. They kind of do okay, I guess. We also have some Marines in the process, which are interesting, and Captain Keyes, who will die to just one shot of a Magnum. I don't know if these technically count as allies because they only spawn if you kill Captain Keyes, but they are very strong humans that will kill you and they are invincible. Now, in Halo Combat Evolved, for the most part, when it comes to allies, we have the standard Marines who are, you know, they're here. We all are pretty familiar with how this goes. There's the one that looks like Sergeant Johnson, who seemingly has a little more health than the rest, but maybe that's just in my head. And then there's this Marine who shoots at you. Not a big fan of him. Technically, Guilty Spark is an ally during the library, though he's really not the best ally if you think about it, because he'll just fly off and leave you to fend for yourself for a while he goes and opens some doors or something. We have had the Sentinels help out in parts of Combat Evolved, which were pretty nice, I guess. I don't feel like they were ever the most efficient, but hey, they at least tried their best. Otherwise, most of Combat Evolved, you're kind of just a lone soldier doing your thing, other than the few missions where you have a squad. Okay, so going into Halo 2, let's talk about the Marines, which we already covered in a video where we looked at all of the Marines specifically. Spoilers, ODSTs in Halo 2 aren't really that special here. We do know that Miranda and Johnson have some plot armor invincibility, so they cannot die in Halo 2, so good for them, but we do get to talk for the first time about having Allied Covenant. As the Arbiter, we get Allied Covenant. I always thought it was really cool getting to fight alongside some elites, or just when you were on the level Arbiter, they would kind of fly in and help you out in battle. That was really cool. Other than that, I never really thought too much about them until we did an El Lasso challenge, which was when we did Legendary literally all skulls on. Like, we turned on all 33 skulls and tried to play through Halo 2. The game kept crashing, unfortunately. But during our playthrough on Sacred Icon, we had one Jackal that just managed to stay alive. I mean, we were shooting Scarab guns everywhere, and this Jackal just was awesome. He just stuck with us through thick and thin, wouldn't leave our side, tried to help us fight, but we were just really impressed with how long he stayed alive. So one of the more memorable moments I've had with an ally in Halo 2, I guess. Halfjaw, of course, is memorable because he was invincible, so that was nice. But yeah, there was some parts in higher difficulties where having this dude being able to just kind of take the blunt force of the Flood or whatever was exceptionally nice. Now, on the flip side, I've never actually been saved by a Grunt, so I can't really speak too highly about them here, but we do get a couple of Grunt allies throughout Halo 2 as well. Now, interestingly, I guess with Halo 2, the game didn't realize there would be instances where the Arbiter, who is teamed up with the humans at the end of the game, would actually interact with Marines, but some of the Marines will refer to the Arbiter as Master Chief, or Chief, just the way that they would refer to their ally in a different level, and I always thought that was kind of goofy, but I never really encountered it, and it wasn't really something I noticed until it was brought to my attention, and then I realized it was goofy. But yeah, it is kind of funny. Moving on to Halo 3, things are a little bit weirder here than other Halo games. The Marines aren't ever like fully paired up in a long mission section in some large open sandbox like they were in older Halos, just certain sections of levels with some exceptions maybe, but usually they just kind of feel like cannon fodder, like things to die nearby so you don't feel like you're just this indestructible force. I mean, on the Ark we do get some Marines teaming up with us, but I've never been overly impressed with their performance ever. We do also have new elites teaming up with us, and it's a little bit interesting in the Halo 3 side of things. These elites finally fighting side by side with us, and they're kind of okay, I guess. They're a little bit goofy, honestly. It is funny hearing them scream fighting against the Flood, but otherwise I've never been overly surprised with how these guys go. It was nice having the Arbiter as this ally in many of the levels though, and since he can't die, or at the very least he can't stay dead, he does end up being a useful form of cannon fodder, except when he just goes off and does whatever he wants. If you watched Thesis play Halo 3 Lasso without dying, you would notice that the Arbiter would just do whatever he wanted very often. On the Ark, Guilty Spark is actually an ally, which is crazy. He doesn't do anything really to help you fight, he just opens some doors, but if you actually kill too many friendly allies, he will start avenging them by murdering you. So maybe Guilty Spark actually does have a soft spot for humanity in one way or another after all, just at the Master Chief's expense. And then if we move ahead to the level of the Covenant in Halo 3, we get to team up with the Flood, which was such a cool moment in the grand scheme of Halo. Like, these guys are these creepy parasites. They've put humans through quite a bit in Halo 1 and 2 and always seem like the big bad enemy, but for a brief moment we do team up with them in Halo 3 and they kind of push in and they fight and they can be kind of useful. It is cool to see the little green reticle over these guys because you just never get to see it, but outside of just this little stretch, they're back to being bad again and they turn on us practically immediately. But it was still kind of a nice little surprise for players who played Halo 3 for the first time. I also want to say that it is worth noting that on the Storm, we get help from all of these workers. Like, they rise up to help fight against the Covenant. It's pretty inspiring, especially when you see them all kind of walking together and doing their thing. I don't really think they're all that effective, to be honest, but hey, they at least look cool doing it. And I don't know, I like the way that this one looks specifically. I don't know why, I just think he looks funny. I wasn't really sure if we should count this, but the auto turrets that are in Halo 3, you can find them on the Ark and also on the last level, are technically allies, and they can come in handy on higher difficulties as they kind of shoot at whatever's trying to kill you. I wasn't going to include this because I thought it was more of an equipment, but the fact that they can turn on you after you fight Guilty Spark on the last level does mean that they are kind of connected to the rest of the Sentinel system or whatever, so they totally should count. So we are going to count them here, and overall, I guess they're pretty okay. I mean, they're not the most amazing thing, but they are okay, so yeah. ODST is a little bit interesting. We get some Marines, we get some ODSTs, and it does seem like at times they might be a little bit careless in how they shoot. I don't know, since this is a game I speedrun with Acrophobia, I've had enough instances where I've been murdered by either a Marine or an allied ODST to not trust them at all. We also waited around in a no-kill run to see how Mickey would do in a fight, and he wasn't really all that good. We do get Virgil though, and unless he's just randomly exploding and dying for some dumb reason, he can be a really useful ally because he gives you overshields, which is the only time in all of ODST that you actually have shields. And I mean, that was really cool back in the day. I thought that was like a little cool power up that we got for that final firefight section of the game if you were actually holding out close to the base. Also, this one's a little bit of a newer one, but in Halo 3 ODST's firefight, when they did the big MCC update that brought firefight to MCC and added matchmaking and all that type of stuff, when they did the huge flood now in firefight and the hype was real and they got all green and foggy when the flood came in, they also added elites that could be your allies, which was actually something kind of unexpected, but they will actually fight alongside you, and it's just like Halo 3 again, except this time it's in ODST, and that's something kind of cool. We've spent some time trying to figure out what the AI of these guys are based on. We think they're based off of Halo 2's elite scripting AI, but we don't really know. Still, cool to see them fight alongside us. Also, if you play on Windward, you can get help from some officers, which is really cool considering the one on Data Hive in the campaign is kind of the worst ally you could imagine. So at the very least, we can pretend that they are helpful and get their help on this level instead. In Halo Reach, we're back to just regular human allies again, no Covenant teaming up with us, but we did get Noble Team, and they can be interesting sometimes. It seems like Noble Team actually ends up being more helpful on the easier difficulties and significantly less helpful on harder difficulties. And we all know that Cat was one of the best drivers of all time as an ally, so we had that going for us. We did have some Marines, and it kind of seemed like the Marines stepped up their ability a bit more. Reach even had this squad mechanic where you could have named Marines following you around in a couple of the levels, and they're actually named after Bungie developers. So sometimes you'll just be playing and you have some famous Bungie developer just as a Marine with you, and I always thought that was really cool. We do have some ODST teammates in Reach as well, and they have jetpacks, and other than them just kind of showing you where to fly, they really aren't that helpful in actually fighting too much. So they exist, but I don't think they're the most helpful things in the world. And then in the final level of Halo Reach, when you're all by yourself and you're supposed to just hold out as long as you can, for whatever reason, all of the other Spartans in this area are just asleep, and they don't help out at all. You're just on your own trying to fight and survive as long as you can. And it always bothered me that they wouldn't get up and help, and they're just kind of napping over here. Now, to change things up, before we go into the 343 era of Halo games, I thought it would be interesting if we asked Luke for his opinions on these ones and let him analyze and talk about Halo 4, 5, and Infinite in because I know how passionate he is for those games and how much he truly loves these games.
Yes, hello, it is me, 343 superfan Rocket Luke, and I'm here to tell you about the 343 era of Halo games. First off, you have Halo 4, which is mostly Marine and actually Spartan 4 focused. In a lot of levels, you will encounter Marines, like on the Forest level, or on Reclaimer, or on Shutdown. And then, especially on Shutdown, you get to see some Spartan 4s running around, and there's also a ton of Marines. And the Spartan 4s are actually there in mass. There's a bunch. And if you start shooting the Marines and the Spartan 4s, more Spartan 4s and Marines will come out and fight you, and you can have a little firefight. I guess at that point they're not allies, but you can have this little firefight section against them and see how long you can survive. That's something we saw in Reach, like other Spartans walking around, but these are Spartan 4s, so I guess they're a little different, so that's kind of cool. Then on some levels you will have Captain Lasky spawned in, and he doesn't do much. He just kind of walks around and then fades out of existence for the most part. That's all he really does. But then also I saw this dude and I was like, oh, that's Lasky, right? He has like the uniform. But then I look at his face and I'm like, Lasky from Walmart? Who's this guy? And of course there's no Covenant allies. So Halo 4 mostly just Marines, and they are pretty weak depending on the difficulty. I mean, on easy they can kind of get by, help you a little bit, but on legendary they mostly just die from experience, so they can become kind of useless. And then the Spartan 4s, actually they feel more like glorified Marines with shields, so I feel like they have slightly more usefulness than the Marines, but not by much. Then when we come to Halo 5, obviously there's big changes. You have now your own squad. You have Blue Team focused around Master Chief with Kelly, Linda, and Frederick. Then you have Team Osiris focused around Locke with Buck, Tanaka, and Vale. I totally knew that. I didn't have to look that up, guys. Believe me, I did not Google those names. I knew them because I'm a big Halo 5 fan. Nonetheless, they are there all the time with you because you cannot play any level without them. So those allies are permanently there. They are pretty doo-doo, actually. They do not help you a lot. I feel like they mostly just get down, especially on higher difficulties. Other than occasionally they will revive you, which I guess that's kind of nice. And there's no point to them really. Overall, they are pretty useless, and also it kind of is stupid. Like if you're playing single player, you cannot play as, you know, Linda or whatever, because it would have been cool to have like a little Master Chief NPC running around with you. I feel like that would have been a cool mention here, but that's not possible. So you can only play as Locke and Master Chief. You're forced to play as them at all times. Then we have some human allies. There's some Marines. There's some like inhabitants of whatever planet we're on. I think it's Meridian. Obviously, they will shoot. They're pretty much like your standard Marine from the other games. On the walking levels, you can kind of see some scientists. You can't do much with them, but they're there, I guess. That's about all I can say about them. Then on the Covenant side, this is actually cool. Halo 5 brings back Covenant allies. Firstly, it is on that one level that I always called Swords of Sanhelius, but it's actually not that. It's the one where you're in the Sangheli city. I constantly forget the name, and I don't know. You have some Covenant allies with you, and then less cool, I guess, but on the walking level, you can see some elite allies, and you can see some grunts even, and you know, I remember the grunts are around the little fire and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the walking levels were pretty pointless, and so were the allies spawned in. I think even Halsey spawned in on some of them. So yeah, take that for what you will. And then there's also Palmer and Exuberant Witness, but they're also kind of as useless as Halsey. I mean, they're just there. I mean, they're allies, but they don't help you. And then we get to Infinite, which has a lot of Marines actually spread out throughout the open world. And those Marines are actually kind of sick. They are probably the most roided up Marines so far in any Halo game. I think they are invincible to you. Like, you cannot betray them. I'm not 100% sure if they can die to the Covenant, probably. But nonetheless, unless you drive them off a cliff, you cannot personally kill these allies or these Marines. They are very strong. They come in big packs, so there will be a lot of Marines just running around you and kind of protecting you, which actually feels kind of nice. But besides that, there isn't much in Infinite. I know there's some scenes where maybe, since all the cutscenes are rendered in engine, and like there'll be scenes where, like, you know, it gives you first person control. In that moment, he's technically like an NPC you can look at in first person. But I mean, obviously in that regard, he's pretty useless. The only use he really has is picking you up in cutscenes and stuff, right? And I mean, I guess he's spawned in physically at the end. Spoiler alert. Well, he's like held hostage in the BDSM chamber. Same way Spartan Griffin, I guess, is spawned in that weird chamber at some point. But like, Spartan Griffin is kind of pointless, honestly. There's like no build up and then he just dies. Like, what is even the point of that? It's kind of cheap almost. And then you have the weapons sometimes like spawned in on a pedestal, and I guess we didn't really talk about this, but in some scenes like Halo 2 Gravemind, I think you can have Cortana, you know, being like there, and you can physically look at her like in first person. And I guess, you know, there isn't much point to it, but I mean, it's kind of cool seeing the AI in like a more, you know, outside of cutscene sense. So there's that. But like, I mean, as allies in Halo Infinite, you really only have the Marines, and that is really it. They're strong though, so I guess that makes up for the lack of anything else. I don't remember any special NPCs besides, you know, the ones that I just said that are almost a stretch. So it's just the Marines, but they're good. So thumbs up for the Marines. Okay, and then I don't think Elijah sent me an outro, so I'm just gonna do it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Huge shout out to our patrons. We couldn't do it without you. You're amazing. If you wanna donate a couple dollars to us, throw them our way. You can sign up at patreon.com/rocketsloth. It helps us immensely. And if you throw a couple dollars our way, you don't have to feel bad about using AdBlock or something like that, you know. So go check that out. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time with a brand new video. Bye, guys.